There she is.
Cool. We are going live right now.
Yep.
And you want to restart the recording? Okay.
I believe we are live. We are live.
Yay!
Hello, everybody. We're going to take 10 seconds to post all of our socials and comments and whatnot. I will, give me a second real quick. It might be fastest to just take the video link and send it in the chat of Zoom. Okay, everybody has the live Facebook link.
Perfect.
Okay,
Great.
Why don't you start and I will repost.
My tech man over here. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, both those out on Facebook and all of our awesome panelists here this week. We have a great crew. It looks very full in the Zoom room today, so thank you so much for joining us. I'm Meredith. This is Adrian, or Adrian+Meredith. Us, along with Ian Thompson, who's been on all of these, have been putting together just these panels every week to try to just have a space to talk it out, trying to figure out what's going on, how we're feeling, how we're doing, and how we want to move forward. So this week we really wanted to focus on how to keep up creative momentum, keep your morale high during all of this, especially because we don't know what the future holds. And a lot of that is about keeping up, maintaining your mental health and all of your personal care. So we have some experts and some people who are just practicing that in their everyday creative life right now, and we wanted to just bring everyone on to have a discussion. So I want to start with everyone going around and introducing yourselves, who you are, what you do, and
Say who.
yeah, and who, how your life has kind of been affected or what you've seen a little bit since this COVID-19 has happened. So, Jill, do you want to get started?
Sure. My name is Jill Kettles, and I am the owner of Miss Jill PR. I do music publicity, I do socials, I do management, I do a bunch of things, but mainly publicity in the roots, folk, blues genres. Been doing this for a long time. I came from a long time with Mark Pucci. I worked with him for 18 years. So anyways, long and short of it, this whole COVID thing at first really didn't hit me project-wise and financial-wise and, mentally-wise, because usually I'm home alone anyway. And also, my brain is already thinking of the fall and next year. So I see the struggle and I hear the struggle. I'm also trying to sell my house. So I got a lot of things going on, but lockdown and isolation, that was fine with me. Staying in the house was fine with me. I think the struggle's basically like an artist, what's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year, project-wise.
Yeah. Fox and Bones, do you guys want to go? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so we were out on tour when everything hit. We were kind of at the start of a 2-month U.S. tour. We had made it. We're from our Portland, Oregon homes all the way down to San Diego, and we were actually just about to start heading east towards Texas and Nashville, and when we had to pack it up and head home and quarantine. And so we've been figuring out new ways to thrive in this situation. I think you have to kind of stay on your toes and figure out something that keeps you productive and keeps you creative and keeps you honing your craft without the travel and without the interaction in the shows.
Yeah, we miss touring, but we actually feel like we're thriving in quarantine. So it's kind of a nice feeling.
Yeah, you guys definitely are. So Scott and Sarah are in an awesome duo folk pop band out in the Washington, Portland. Gosh, well, I get my What is geography? I haven't traveled in so long. They're an awesome singer-songwriter duo out there. And so, thank you so much for joining us today. Claire, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm a singer-songwriter based in Nashville, and I'd say the biggest effect the COVID is having on me is the touring as well. So I've seen, obviously, basically the whole year fall apart. So, but again, trying to use the time that I would usually be spending on booking and managing and promoting the tours for the actual content creation and just working on writing more and, and moving things online. So
yeah,
that's nice.
Transitioning everything to virtual. Yeah. Yeah, Beth, do you want to go next?
My name is Beth Marcus, and I work at an organization called Porter's Call. It is a nonprofit that serves and seeks to come alongside touring and recording music artists. So obviously in this season, we kind of have to drop the touring side and all you guys recording artists and knowing that you guys are probably a population in our entire globe that is probably being hit one of the hardest.
Yeah.
And so the need for a place to come alongside is becoming, obviously we've seen a spike in our numbers of people coming and reaching out to us, but we love that we can be available. We try to provide our services for free. So we have 2 counselors, myself and a guy named Chad, and we both provide counseling for free. And it's specifically for touring and recording music artists. So I've seen that artists are some of the most resilient, brave people I've ever met on the planet. And it's really an honor to come alongside and try to support and give encouragement in some way, shape, or form. But artists tend to be very creative, obviously, and innovative. And so I've been amazed by the way that people have rallied and found other revenue streams, found another way to get their art out there, and have really capitalized on this creative time. But they're also, what I also love about artists is they're so honest. And so they're really digging into their story and the challenges of this time. And so it makes my job a lot easier to be able to really help guide along in this process and make the most of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for everything you guys have already done
Yeah.
for the last couple years.
Adrian and I can attest, we both have
clients.
received services from Porter's Call, and it has made a huge difference in our lives. So thank you for being here today. Brianna, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm Brianna Lane. I run a venue here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's the Warming House. We're a small capacity listening room, and I also sit on the board for Folk Alliance Region Midwest, and I'm on the committee to do the virtual connections. Woohoo! And I also am the talent buyer for a Minneapolis busking program. So we, in normal times, we would be sending 15 artists out a week to Hennepin Avenue and also that many on Nicollet Mall, and paying them to perform, not only musicians, but dancers and magicians and poets. So we're transferring that all online as well. I have been hanging in there during these times. It's kind of messing with my brain a little bit because I got into this. I mean, I was a touring singer-songwriter forever, and I built a listening room so that I could sit in a room with strangers and feel all the vibrations, like all the frequencies, instead of just the few that we're getting across on the computers. So it's hard, but I'm hanging in there. Personally, quarantine, lockdown is, cool because I'm an introvert. So I'm not, I don't feel like I'm missing out on things, and that's cool. And yeah, just creating plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, the whole alphabet of plans, and then waiting to see which one makes sense, really.
Way to say it.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way I think anybody's explained that to like how the last 2 months have gone is yeah, you just plan multiple different paths and you see if any of them hit.
Yeah, it feels like we are living in a flow chart versus a step ladder,
Absolutely.
So I guess I kind of want to.
Ian, how about Ian?
Oh, Ian, do you want to? Sorry, Ian. I always know who you are, so I forget to.
It's not a big deal.
Who is this guy, anyways?
Yeah, right. I'm just here. I'm hanging out.
Yeah.
Ian Thompson in Appleton, Wisconsin. I manage Adrian+Meredith, as well as the Director of Talent and Partnerships for Mile of Music Festival. Throughout, this has certainly been a hell of a year the last 2 months. And personally, it really hasn't been that bad. I think I've been more social than I've ever have before, connecting with old friends, family, colleagues. Professionally, though, it's been, like you guys have all been saying, there's working with Adrian and Meredith, it's kind of going through those scenarios, plan A, plan B, plan C, and just kind of keep being creative, keep pushing, that direction with them. The festival side, that's been a whole nother fun avenue. We formally canceled the festival yesterday, so just kind of working on that, leading last 2 weeks of contacting all the artists and sponsors and all of our partners with that, and the follow-up last night and then today with that announcement.
Yeah.
Not to go full into it so fast on this one, but I saw some irony to canceling a festival on the same day that they opened the bars in your state.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole there.
Dichotomy, like it depends on who you talk to, depends on what the situations are.
Well, I think that this is an interesting time, and every week that we've been doing these panels, part of what we talk about each week is the changes, because things are changing so quickly. They're changing rapidly out there. So there's a couple, I'm trying to think of what direction I want this to go, but I mean, one thing that I think is very real is we've all had kind of prepared for what the day-to-day looked like in quarantine. Now there is potentially a shift, but then there's all these caveats of, right, but does that mean a shift for live music? Or does that mean that the world is going to pick up and move on and we're still going to be stuck, And how that's just something I've been thinking about a lot, and definitely something I'd like to talk about. Maybe, Jill, do you have any insight on that as you look not just like where we're at now, but also kind of where it's going?
6 months, 12 months?
Project-wise, like PR-wise, publicity-wise, I hope people release their albums. And I was telling somebody just 20 minutes ago, I said, I hope people still do that, because it helps you keep your juices going. It helps your, think of it as like a resume. You keep your resume going. So many things you can be doing as well as releasing. And you can release it digitally, yes. You can sell from your Facebook page, yes. The only thing you won't get is the nice little paycheck of your shows and all that, and that's the cringe. But, keep your juices going. But I hope it does continue. Budgets will get smaller, reach will get smaller. I know radio stations are starting to sort of get a little flimsy, and they're starting to shut down, take out, and move around. I think it's going to be a nice little left turn for us at the end of the year, when we figure out what happened and what goes forward and what works and what doesn't. And maybe something wasn't working 3 months ago that we're trying to straighten out mentally and physically and industry-wise, that might turn us around. I don't know. But right now I'm operating as if, unfortunately, there's no lockdown. I'm not operating. I'm keeping my head forward, because I know it's important for the artists to keep going forward with their music. Because right now, tomorrow, you release an album and you could get a great quote from the New York Times that'll carry you for the rest of your life. And if you didn't do that, you might have missed out on it.
Sure. Claire and Scott and Sarah, do you guys want to speak to it? I asked both of you guys as artists to be on here, because I've just seen you've taken two different approaches, but you both have been able to maintain a lot of your creativity during this time, which I really admire. Adrian and I have been struggling to write. We've been struggling to feel inspired and creative. And I've been really inspired watching that both of you as projects just keep content out there and keep plugging. Can you speak a little bit to what's going on behind the scenes and what you're kind of using for motivation and how you're feeling?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting thing, because when we set our goals for 2020, one of them was to figure out how to tour less and tour smarter. So have better shows, have fewer of them, make more money at them, and figure out how to make a side income. And then COVID hit, and we're like, okay, well, I guess we should figure out that side income thing now and figure out how we're going to stay relevant. And so we've kind of pivoted into a couple different things. One of them is we used to, when we played live, we would take song requests from the audience, and they could request anything and we'd learn it on the fly and play it. So we're kind of doing a similar version of that online. called Songgrams, where people can request a song and we'll make a video and like dedicate it to someone for them and then send it to them. And so that's been kind of a fun way. And then we release all the videos on our Patreon. So if you're subscribing on Patreon, then you get all of our cover videos through YouTube. And that's been kind of a nice way to just keep things going. And the other thing we started doing was writing custom songs for people. So we just had our first one. It was 3 kids who wanted to get their mom something really special, and she's a big music fan and a big supporter of ours. And so we wrote her own song after an hour-long Zoom call with the kids, getting stories and just like hearing all about her. And then we took that and put it into a song that we recorded in the studio. So and then in addition, we're finishing up an album as well.
Hey, you guys are like actually recording right now too.
Yeah, we're about to go in the studio for pre-production next week to finish the last 3 songs of a 10-song album. And so, yeah, things are kind of just moving right along. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think when you take out the 5 hours of driving we're doing a day, all of a sudden, we have a whole lot of time.
5 to 15 hours.
Yeah, we have a whole lot of time to actually get things done, and you know, relaxation is taken a part of that too. But when you have more of your day, just being able to carve out a little bit of time for creativity has been easier.
Yeah. And do you guys feel like studios are open? Is that a thing? I've had people ask, and we've definitely talked about doing fly tracks where you kind of send it. It's more like home studios, but what's been your experience with that so far in recording?
I think naturally they're set up for
social distancing.
Yeah, for isolation. So
you can be in separate rooms.
Literally called isolation booths. Yeah.
But we've
vocal isolation.
we have found that we've had to do some more planning. I think normally we'd record more all at once, and I think we've had to do a little bit more. We're moving towards the tracking side, just so we can keep people isolated. And if we have a few members of the band that have different issues, and so making sure that they can record from home and send their tracks in instead of coming in and being in contact with anyone, just to be safe.
Yeah, our producer, we did this. He wasn't planning on opening until June, but we kind of talked about this custom song thing that we did last week, and so it definitely changed. We used to come in the front door. Now we have to come in the back door directly into the tracking room. We weren't really in the same room with him at all. We had masks on when we were like near him, and there was hand sanitizer everywhere. So it changes it, and it definitely changes the vibe a little bit, but and he's the only studio that we've really contacted, so we don't really know if it's a thing. But I think people that have certain setups are probably better off than others, like if there's a separate entrance, if there's a separate bathroom, that kind of thing.
And Claire, you've actually added complexity to it, because you do like co-writes with artists that you may not even know all that well, versus with other band members that more familiar.
Yeah, that is true. And I will say Zoom co-writing is not as fun as in-person co-writing. There are definitely some struggles that come along with that.
Yeah.
But
some of it's been successful, and some of it doesn't feel quite as rewarding. Can you share with that?
Definitely. And I have done a lot of writing on my own in this period too, which has been a really nice thing for me as well. And I think partially because I've been doing more reading. Like I feel like when I was in like full on like booking tours, managing tours, I wasn't reading very much. And now we have extra time, and that's been like spurring my creative juices a lot.
Yeah.
But as far as the online co-writing goes, I'm a part of this festival that takes place in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, called the Steelbridge Song Fest. And they just started doing that online this week. And so we have been, doing like 3-person co-writes online. And it is cool because you can send each other tracks and voice memos and kind of work together. It just changes the collaboration process a little bit, I'd say. Yeah, but at least since we have the time, it gives you kind of an unlimited, like you can let a song sit for a little bit and come back to it and revisit, and maybe there's not as much of a rush to finish it in the 3-hour, 4-hour scheduled time period that you usually have. So like that gift of time there gives it a little bit of space and a little bit of time to simmer.
Yeah, and I also know it's funny because when I texted with you when this all first happened, you kind of had a really smart idea like immediately, which is you and a couple friends went and did a friend quarantine out in the woods and kind of created your own little artist compound, which I thought was so genius. So can you share a little bit? I bet a lot of good stuff came out of that.
Yeah, it really did. And honestly, it was my friend's idea. And they kind of said, we had this like family farm available. It was a friend's family farm. And so we went out there, I think pretty much like as soon as like Nashville shut down, we just all drove out there. And it was just a group of, 5 or 6 of us. And we all stayed quarantined together. But there were 4 songwriters amongst us. So we set up a little studio in the farmhouse, and then we're just writing and recording every other day, which was really nice. So I think we've got a little kind of like a friend compilation album. It's nothing fancy. It's going to be really raw and acoustic, but it's going to be a cool documentation of the time, because it was really our like processing this like isolation and processing this huge change, and then just channeling it into our art, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important point, and Beth, I kind of want to bring you into this. I know that you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, and one of the things we really talked about was, how to take this time and how it's okay to also take the time to grieve the things that we've lost during this. And obviously, I love, keeping momentum, keep going, forge ahead, but there's also these moments of stillness where it's, we are trying to grieve and we are trying to process. And Beth, you're somebody who talks to artists all day, every day. Can you share a little bit about that, and also maybe like that article that you shared with me about expectations for the future and that kind of stuff? Or
Yeah, well, I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, that artists really are innovative. So you guys are already sharing some of those creative ways to continue to keep your creativity up and create income, which is exactly what one of the things that you all are so good at. And the other thing that I feel like the artists tend to be really gifted at is understanding their emotions and their feelings. Oftentimes, though, what happens is because your careers are typically, you're on a fast track and you're constantly moving, you don't really have or take the time to sit in those feelings and process them. So what I would encourage you to do, and what I've shared with Meredith and many other artists, is to hold both. And so I even would go to the extent of saying, like, as you process with a friend or journal, I would say take a journal, and on one side of the paper, like the journal's open, so you've got one page and another page, right? And so on one page, write what's hard. Like, this is so hard, and just let the pen go. Just, this is hard, and this is hard, and this is hard, and just list it out, okay? On the other side of the page, go, okay, now that I've vented all of the hard, I want to talk about the hopeful. And the same would go, another layer, as other than hard and hopeful, is to take it even a step further or deeper and say, this is what I'm grieving on one side of the page. This is the losses. And even if, you're going to get touring back, and I think it's going to be back better than ever, because people are going to be like a bull out of a cage, just ready to enjoy it and be together. But we don't know when. And so there's grief of all of these tour dates that have been postponed, and there's grief of opportunity. And so it's fair and valid for you to embrace that and see that and feel that and process it. So you name the grief, and then alongside of that, you're going to name the gratitude, because when you can really process the grief, then you can process the gratitude. And so, and if you're talking about it, if you're not much of a journal writer, which I think most artists are good about writing, if you prefer to verbally process, talk about it with a safe person and ask them to just hold that space with you and not give you advice, not tell you what they think, not challenge you, but just simply to listen. And I think it's important to visually like hold it. And so you can say, this is what's hard, and let your hand just stay open. And then just say, and this is what I'm hopeful about. And the same with grief. This is what I'm grieving. This is the losses. This is what I'm grateful for. And when you hold them both with your hands open, you can really, it's more of a balance. You're more balanced. You're more centered, and you're not gripping and holding it as tightly. And so that's something that I encourage a lot of people to do. And also, like you mentioned, Meredith, is being present. I think oftentimes we either can dwell in the past or obsess about the future. And so I think it's really important to look at the past. The past can help shape us, whether it's our childhood or even last year's touring or last year's, the last record. It's okay to do that and to learn from it. But what I would encourage people to do is to not obsess in the past, because the past can really have this ability to grip you in regret and resentment and shame. And it makes us kind of get into a really deep, dark place of depression. And we also don't want to go too far and obsess into the future, even though it's important to plan and it's important to come up with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. But it's also, if we spend too much time in the future, then we are obsessing over what if. Okay. And then we've got all these 20 hypothetical situations, and maybe none of them will come to pass, and then we miss the present. So the past dictates often the statement of, if only, if only, if only. The future is what if, what if, what if. And so I think just staying in the present of going forward today, this is what my limitations are. This is what I'm hopeful for. This is what I'm grateful for. And I'm going to step into that for today. So that's kind of a lot of, I said a lot of things there, but the crux of it is staying present in the current day, holding both realities.
I kind of want to open it up. Yeah, if anyone wants to just jump in and.
I was thinking about it from Brianna. I think you got something to say too, but I thought of you when Beth was talking. I was like, there's this phrase that keeps coming back to me in the last 2 months about how if we can kind of, as what Beth said, if we can kind of recognize that the past is the past and that this is changing, not all just negative, but for positive reasons as well. As soon as we recognize that change has occurred, we can change with it. And the music clubs are a great example of that, right? You're coming from a perspective where I'm like, you have artists that are changing the way that they write and communicate with fans, and you have the whole industry that's trying to change. But the music clubs, that's a very specific niche that you fill in the entire industry. And how does that change? But you probably also have something to say, so go ahead.
No, it's so much. Planning for the future and planning A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I try really hard to not hold on to one of those as like the perfect answer. It's just having that array and being okay with every single possibility is how I try to stay grounded with it. And then also living, day to day, we wanted to keep our audience that knows the Warming House engaged. We wanted to keep the audience that knows these artists engaged. And so at the end of April, I was like, I got to do something. We tried a couple different things, presenting artists on Zoom, on their YouTube channels. And honestly, a couple venues that I had talked to, we all had a little bit of sense of panic because we're like, oh my gosh, all the artists are going direct to the people and they don't need us anymore. But our roles just kind of shift a little bit. I know a lot of artists are pairing with venues right now because they want to keep that relationship there. It is truly a relationship. And because without artists, we are nothing. We're just a room. and without, without venues, there are no actual tours and sitting in rooms with strangers and taking that.
To deal with Facebook.
What?
Then we all have to deal with Facebook.
Yeah, it's just like, So at the end of April, I was like, I got to do something. And it was our 4th birthday coming up, and we decided to stream one person live every single day in May at 4:00, and people were happy to do it and booked the whole thing in like 2 days, and we're doing little interviews up front, so we're really checking in with people, really keeping that community feel. But that was something that I could focus on now to like get me grounded and be like, no, we are still important. We still love these people. We still want to bring these people to folks that don't know. Like, we have people tuning in just to tune in because they know that we bring good music to people. So that's good. And it made me feel like my job is still important. Yeah, I feel like I was gonna say 3 other things too, but
Well, jump in at any time. We can open this up. So, Jill, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, she kind of hit me on some things, but there was something, I was on a Georgia Music Partners webinar today, a little bit ago, and I quickly took notes and I took some screenshots, but the psychiatrist talked about allostatic load, and that's kind of sort of what we're all going through a little bit. We're getting, it's a flight, fight, freeze kind of thing, and I'm sure Beth knows about that. And so they also talked about, don't your productivity shouldn't be compared to your neighbors or your friends or the next person, and your and our systems can't handle all this stress. So the only way we can get rid of it basically is through exercise, creativity, journaling, things that Beth was talking about. And I just wanted to share the phrase, load and all that. And plus, don't think that you have to be perfect every day. And, you can be focused every day. Just pace yourself. This is a chance where we can all pace ourselves. And the other part of all that, checking in with other people and being responsible for each other. I was in another Folk Alliance thing that was talking about, be focused and be disciplined and keep going back to those old relationships you might have with Brianna or you might have with someone else, and just keep in tune with these people, because this is kind of like being a widow. I'm a pro because I am one. So I say, check in with me in September, check in with me Thanksgiving, check in with me, and don't just leave it to weddings and funerals and conferences. So this might be our way to sort of just,
Get
over that.
Connection back, maybe get a little more human again.
Yeah, that's why Farm, immediately, Farm Folk Alliance Region Midwest is all about community. We're the little conference of the big conferences, and we decided to do peer sessions so that we could just keep these relationships going and check in. And I think that's a huge part of what needs to happen right now. And Claire, you were saying about checking in and co-writing with these folks. It's like you're checking in a different way that means exactly like the same thing. You're checking in with the platform of creativity and songwriting, when I'm checking in on the platform of music business and business well-being, and it's all important. And thank God for Zoom, right? As much as we spend on it, and my eyes crisscross sometimes, but it's so lovely to see faces, too, and actually put faces to names that I've been working with for a while, who haven't necessarily been to the Warming House yet or have played there, and I didn't get a chance to, run that show. So yeah, those connections are huge.
It's not about now, it's about later. Just as much as important.
Right.
Ian, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say to like what Beth was saying about the past, present, and future. I kind of always say, you can't move ahead if you continue to look behind you. It's important to maintain that level of positivity. I try to remind myself to be positive every day. Going through what we just went through yesterday with the formal cancellation of a festival. Just trying to put take a positive outlook on that. That we're going to be focused on coming back next year, and then come back for the community. as well as, what you were saying about relationships from a venue to an audience side. It's so true with the artist too. So and it's important to have these rooms and these spaces, and hopefully that we can keep them afloat and keep them going and have them there in the future, because there is a relationship connection that happens when you're that artist and that audience member. I'm not an artist, so I'm taking this from an audience member perspective of I'm sitting there watching them, and there is that dynamic of a relationship happening right there. So it's important.
Yeah, I think, Ian, what you brought up just sparked something that I've been thinking about, and I haven't figured out a way to put into words yet until you just said this, but there's something, even though we get comments on our Facebook live shows and our Instagram live shows, and we do feel the communication during our shows through the internet, what I'm realizing over the last 2 months is how important places like the Warming House become. Because I would give anything to play there versus on Facebook, and I'm realizing for the first time what the difference is. Because I never really went through Facebook. I never decided to go through a virtual tour before. This is the first time we've ever done this. Most of the time, we've just gone and looked at different rooms across the country in different countries and compared venue to venue. But now we're comparing venue to an entirely different beast.
Yeah, I remember we talk after a couple of your live streams, and I'm like, that seemed like it went well, and you guys are like, did it?
Yeah.
Because you're right, there isn't that audience participation, and you even commented on your live streams where you're like, oh, and the crowd's going wild, and it's,
And I think that it shows that there's a lot of in between, when artists perform live, part of the art is that medium of being live, because I can't tell you how many times we make a set list and then never play what's on. I mean, because you just feed off of the energy and you create, obviously we spend this time alone creating songs and creating new content, but when we put it together, it is happening in real time when we perform live, and it's almost impossible to do that when you're virtual. It's like we're just feeding off of each other's bizarre moods, which is like, who knows where this is going to go, It's like, yeah. So Brianna, you were going to say.
I feel like,
Oh, go ahead.
the last time I played at the Warming House, Brianna and I had a conversation about how we feel like our best selves when we're on stage, and that does feel like a little part that's missing from the live stream. Like you get a little bit of that, but you don't get the whole thing.
There's something about being on a stage performing live. It's a sacred spape. It's an untouchable space. And certainly it can go wrong. I mean, we've all had bad shows where you just can't wait for it to be over, guitar strings, and you're like, can we be done now? But for the most part, it's that sacred, untouchable space of energy where you're just surrounded by this bubble of energy, and you're just like nothing can get you down in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think we're all missing that high, that adrenaline and performance high right now.
That's
Part of your load, that's part of your release and feeling your adrenaline, your hormones and everything. And sometimes you can walk on a bad mood and walk off on a good mood.
Yeah.
It brings you fearlessly into the current moment, because you have to be there to perform, to give your best. You have to like allow the art to come out, to allow the songs to be the best they can. You have to be 100% in that moment. You can't be off thinking about what you're going to do, or else the music won't like come out right.
Or you'll just forget lyrics. That's what I do. I'm like, start to think in the future, and then I'm like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I would love to offer just some encouragement, because I'm not an artist, but as someone who has been in the audience, and who I remember in college, even, I don't know even what course this was, but they were talking about the medium of performing arts. And they were doing research after the Depression that the first basically I don't know what you call it. I mean, basically the first thing that came back was live theater, and after the Depression, and it was one of those things that even during the Depression was consistently still being maintained. And they did research on that because it was obviously expensive to go, but the research showed that from a psychological standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a human standpoint, people need the live show. And so that's why I personally have full confidence that when it comes back, it will be off the charts. But our brains are hardwired for connection, and that's relational connection, but it's also connection to various mediums of art. And you guys are the conduits of that. And so, and the venues, you create space to make it happen. And so, even though there's more things that have come out of this where people have gotten creative on the live shows and that sort of thing, I think, I want to share a quote real quick, but I think the dissonance is really palatable, and it is what's creating this hunger for people to get back into these venues. I don't remember who said this, but I wrote it down, but it was referencing the challenge of Zoom calls and Instagram Live and Facebook Live for shows and for things like that. And it's the plausible deniability of each other's absence. Our minds get tricked into the idea that we are together when our bodies actually feel that we're not. Dissonance can be exhausting. So when you're talking about feeling exhausted after a show, it's because you're like, we're together, but we're not. We can't hug. We can't have the banter. And so it's so valid for you guys to feel exhausted, and know that we're all exhausted and we all want you to get back on the stage. So when it's time, I just think the floodgates are going to open. So I'm super excited about that. And that's looking to the future, not in a way of anxiety and making something happen, but with great hope that it will.
Yeah.
I guess as a kind of a group conversation, especially, to Jill and Brianna and anyone else who's heard stuff, I guess what does the reopening look like? What does the start look like? What conversations are you guys having with other industry people? Yeah.
I was just talking to Chatfield Center for the Arts here in Minnesota, and a little bit about, they're considering doing streaming shows with folks, and they kind of want to know what we're up to. And we're talking about how some places are going to reopen at half cap and, for social distancing in there, but we don't know business wise. That doesn't really make sense in a lot of locations, because we can't financially help artists or pay our rent when we're operating at half capacity. So it's interesting. Some agents are contacting us about July shows, and they're like, well, we expect things to half reopen. Aren't you going to half reopen? And we're like, I don't, the nuances of the finances and is real, are real, and so without explaining every detail to them, we say we don't know. Honestly, we're gonna play it super duper safe, because we're small, and we're of a high risk group, and at least I am, and we don't want anybody to get sick. So we're looking a year ahead, or we're looking when there's a vaccine or a treatment, or something real that we can look to for science. And we don't know what it looks like between now and reopen. We're just taking it a month at a time. Like, I know that we're not going to be able to stream an artist a day in June. That takes a lot of energy. But we'll do something to keep folks engaged. I was going to say something earlier that I think is important about being engaged with your community and Zoom calls and whatnot, is in spaces like I took a year off from playing out, which has happened to land on this bizarre year. So I'm glad I'm not figuring out how to play my music on Facebook. But if I were in your shoes, artists, I think I would miss this conversations at the merch table at the end of the show, and like, you know, reconnecting with fans. Like, you show up in Minneapolis and there's a fan of yours from Baltimore there, and randomly, and that conversation is just so cool. Ellis Delaney, she is an artist here in Minneapolis. She is doing a Patreon thing where she has a Zoom call once a week with her patrons, just to connect with her fans and build a community around her music. I hadn't heard of any other artists doing that, and I think that's really amazing, and almost it satisfies a little bit of that piece of connection with your fans instead of just connection with other artists and other people in the industry. She's having a really good time with that. I thought that was important to share.
Yeah, there's when you guys were talking about that, there was something that came up in the back of my mind, and it's from years ago, but and Beth probably will get a kick out of this because it's developmental, but our pedal steel player has 2 children, and they were of the age at the time that he was touring where you could tell as they were getting older, they either understood or did not understand that dad was on an iPad on tour. And you'd be like, I can talk to him, but I can't touch him. I don't understand why he's been gone, but yet he's right here. And it's like, we're like almost going back to that developmental stage, you can't trick your body to realize that you're not with all these people.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to try to stay connected, but one thing that I've been reflecting on this week is I've been kind of paying attention to some of my own anxiety as things are starting to open back up. And there's that feeling, it's like I had accepted quarantine. Like, I was good with it. We were finding our own little rhythm, our own little routine. Things felt calm. As an artist, I think it's the first time since we've really started pushing that we actually felt like we got true mental, spiritual, and creative rest. Because any other time we've tried to take time off the road, we end up scrolling Facebook saying, that band's out doing that, and that artist got that slot, and oh my God, how are they opening for them? And it's hard. It's not necessarily a negative competitiveness, but it's really glorious and comforting about thinking nobody's touring right now. Nobody, we're all on the same page. And it was like, I felt this mass, I mean, worldwide. It wasn't even like, oh, my friends in the UK get to tour, but I don't. I mean, we're talking worldwide. Now, things are starting to open back up, but it's just creating confusion of my definition of reality right now, and not knowing what that means. Does that mean, you know, if a venue asks us to play in July, should we say yes? Should we say no? Like, all of a sudden I'm feeling all these things pop up and feeling like the world is going to start turning again, but maybe it doesn't start turning for us.
And that's okay.
Yeah. So does anyone have any, that's really just an open-ended observation within myself.
Yeah, we could spend the rest of the call on that topic alone.
Have you all read the Hammer and the Dance yet?
No.
It's a fantastic article, and there's a daily, the Daily from New York Times put out a podcast episode kind of that talks a lot about it too, that alludes to there being 2 different factions of society for a while. One is either the people that have had COVID and feel like they're immune and they're okay, and people that are healthy and well and can go out to concerts, and then people that are anxious and scared and maybe in those high risk groups. And so there's going to be this divide for a while. Yeah. I'm worried about that, but also I think during this quarantine time, we are learning to listen to ourselves a lot more. And yes, you're questioning it, but I think we're able in the quiet to come up with our own answers, our own comfort level, considering, you know, what you have going on in your own life, who you are with, who you want to be with, you know, high risk folks or not. And I'm not anxious about that because I know exactly that we're going to play it safe because I know that I don't want it and I don't want to get people sick. So I think in the quiet, there's a lot of reflection that can be anxiety producing, but we can, I don't know, maybe trust ourselves a little bit more.
Ian, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to Wednesday night, you know, up here in Wisconsin, the state legislature or the state Supreme Court overturned the governor's stay-at-home order without any, Brianna's shaking her head, she knows, without any guidelines.
It's way too close to Wisconsin right now.
Right.
Georgia.
Yeah, like Georgia, without any guidelines whatsoever. So bars just complete, like, it was like 5 o'clock happy hour. All these people flooded the bars and restaurants. My wife and I, we just had immediate anxiety for what that would look like for the future, you know, and we really did have a lot of empathy and feeling for people of what, you know, again, with our industry, you know, we want to get back to work. And now things like that prolong that. And so, you know, the anxiousness of it. And then also, you know, for my job, having, you know, a major announcement the very following day, and also working with Adrian+Meredith, you know, again, wanting them to come up. This is a good market for them. Now, how does that, you know, prolong that or push that all out when things like that happen? When we talk about reopening, I think there definitely has to be a plan, you know, from city, county, state levels of what we can do. And like Brianna said, just be smart. I talked to a venue owner here in town yesterday. They're a music club. And she said, yeah, sure, we can open, but we're not going to. Not until I know what it is, the safety guidelines that I need. Folk Alliance just had a really great panel the other day on canceling or postponing. And they were saying, one of the agents on there was Baron. Talking about, Baron. He was talking about, you know, moving forward in their contracts, how they're going to put safety protocols in. So, you know, what are those venues are going to be doing, you know, to protect the artists, the engineers, and everybody that's coming in there?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that has come up in previous topics, previous panels that we've done is, you know, if we do a state by state reopening and a county by county reopening, and if we do follow the numbers, and if the government is doing such, right, they're opening certain county by county and certain states by states. Does that mean, and this is just a question for 6 months from now, not even today, but does that mean that artists will start touring different markets first?
Baron actually touched on that a little bit, I believe, if I heard him correctly. He said something about cluster touring, did he say? Yes. Like regional touring? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was that it? Like stay within your 3 states kind of thing, or 4 states, and just not wanting to go to California, not wanting to go overseas, and just sort of like, you know, cultivating your little, nurturing your little, you know, area. And that was impressive. And then he reminded that a lot of the shed tours are going to get down to the stadiums, and a lot of the stadiums are going to the arenas. Everyone's going to go down a notch, and their presentation. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to me, between now and when this sort of settles, because right now there was an article, I can't remember what it was, but it was about how people are pushing the pandemic. Like, when are people going to say it's over? And I think people are already saying it now. I don't think it is now, but, you know, because they're fed up of being so wrapped up in their own emotions and their own feelings and craziness. And so, you know, like other states didn't get affected as much as some states did and some cities. And it's definitely a case by case, but I think it's going to sort of bring us regionally back together again, in my brain.
Yeah.
Maybe that might revive media. Maybe that might revive the old radio stations. That might revive things. I don't know. But, you know, in my world with publicity, things are, you know, at least with national and regional and podcasts and stuff like that, is still operating as close to as is as possible.
Yeah.
I think everything that the point you made, Jill, about everything coming down a level is probably going to be beneficial in a way for at least the music and the community of the industry. I think everything's been moving to bigger, better, faster, stronger for so long, and we're losing touch with the actual art of it and the thing, because it's supposed to bring a community together, and when things get so big, you just get lost in a crowd. And so I think there is a silver lining with this, and it's that we can strengthen our communities, and that we can maybe return to the form of expressing the art for the joy of bringing people together, and less for, you know, trying to reach 1 million people.
Right, like Coachella, Bonnaroo, you know, all those places. You know, maybe that's going to put a kibosh on that, because this is too big. And that might have just been, I don't know who that might have been, who started it, but, you know, maybe he needs a timeout chair.
Like thinking about South by Southwest, how it started as this really cool event where all the little bars in Austin, you could just hop one-to-one, and that's what everyone did. And then it became super corporatized, where there was these massive shows, and so the small showcases couldn't compete. And you know, we went once and we were like, what's the point of this? No one comes to the smaller showcases unless you have fans in Austin. And so maybe it'll bring some of those festivals that kind of got too big to, you know, support like what it initially was founded on, is art and discovering new music, and not just like going because the top 40 artists are all on the list.
No. Because if you look across the board, you'll see like some of the blues festivals and some of the folk festivals have the same people. It's just a different month. And there was no way to get into those doors without being a part of a big agency, or you had a big manager or whatever. Maybe this might maybe it might break the lactic acid in all of it.
And I'll add one last thing that I was going to add earlier, and it reminded me. Angus from Folk Alliance, who's the first one. So we had this whole idea of running a panel, and we're going to wrap up here soon. And I want to say thank you guys so much for being on the panel. But this idea came from a Steve Johnson panel that he started with the head of Folk Alliance, the head of Americana Fest, the head of IBMA, and I realized at that moment that those people are kind of living in a different day-to-day than the people on this call, because they're dealing with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people and venues like Bridgestone Arena and massive gatherings. And that timeline and our timeline may not match, and we don't know that yet. And I understand why Folk Alliance may have canceled for February of 2021, but that may or may not have any implications. So we started this whole panel based on that conversation. But one of the things that Angus did say, to go full circle, and we can wrap up, is the first thing that Angus said on the call was that, and I thought was extremely smart. He said that the music industry may go back to what it was originally designed for, which is the porch picking parties and the campfire songs and the direct-to-fan communication that the rest of the industry has monetized. Thank you.
We haven't had coffee yet.
Yeah, we need it.
That's impressive.
But I thought it was incredibly powerful for someone of that stature and that much control over what's going on in his world to realize that that the belly of this whole thing and the top of the industry cycle are two completely different worlds right now, and there's a lot to cover in between. But Meredith, did you want to wrap up stuff?
I was just going to give us an opportunity to kind of make some closing statements. I know we covered a lot of ground today and a lot of different perspectives. But overall, you know, for all those out there watching on Facebook too, if you have any last minute questions, put them on. But follow up with all the panelists on here. I've tagged them all. I do want to kind of put out a little PSA too, that, you know, if there's anybody out there that really is struggling with healthcare or mental health or anything like that, reach out to Adrian and I. We can get you in touch. We you know, through our work with Porter's Call, we have access to a lot of resources that we know about, and Music Cares and like a lot of really awesome organizations. So I will say that we've kind of touched on some mental health stuff, but we didn't really get into the weeds. So I do want to put that out there, that there are resources, because this is a hard time. There's a lot of joy and there's a lot of positivity and there's a lot to be grateful for in all of this. But the fact that it's hard is still just true.
And again, Ian has been very good at posting links. And if you guys feel strongly about certain resources that we may or may not have discussed on the panel, we started pushing some of those links to the post on Facebook so they can live forever. Anyone that's watching and feels like they want to follow up, I can even, like the Hammer and Dance book, I'm gonna go and send a link to that and post that one as well. So
yeah. So who wants to
wrap it up?
I just think there's a lot of silver linings to what's going on, and a lot of you all touched upon that, and it's been just fantastic being in this conversation. Thank you all for putting it together. I am, and I'm glad you said reach out to the panelists. I'm here. I'm spending a lot of time with folks figuring out live streams for multiple artists, and so I'm here to help with that. I'm here to just talk. And yeah, we're all gonna get through this, right? Yeah.
It's a really crappy job right now in 2012 of 20. Quarantine, really crappy job.
I'd love to just say thank you to Adrian and Meredith for including me in this. And I just love, I emailed you yesterday and just saying, I love the way that you are utilizing your platform to help others. And I know it helps you to kind of stay connected. And but I just appreciate that you guys are giving your time and energy into this. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. And the thing that I would just close with and emphasize more than anything is just be kind to yourself, please. You've never experienced this before. No one in our history that's alive right now has experienced this before. And so we are navigating uncharted waters, and it's really hard to not look to the left and the right and see what other people are doing and compare. But I would just say stay in your lane and love on yourself, compassion for yourself, take care of yourself. And if you can do that, creativity will pour out, because shame is one of the biggest silencers of creativity, shame and fear. And so use whatever you're afraid of to step into courage and just really take care of yourself, because this is a hard time.
Thank you.
To piggyback on that, Beth, I was just thinking about this as well, that those of us who do look like we're doing a lot, and I know that the more people are online, like I think we tend to be all over the place, and people are like, you're doing so much, how are you doing so much? I think it's important to, say that like we are also watching multiple hours of TV a day and sleeping until 11 or noon sometimes. And I think it's really important, again, to remember that, we're only on Facebook right now, and Facebook really is still a highlight reel. And even in quarantine, it's still a highlight reel, and most people are only putting out what they're doing well. And so, just piggybacking on what Beth said, being gentle with yourself. I know I've had to learn that, to not be productive 24 hours a day and burn myself out. And so, yeah, just do what feels right to you, and the things that we're doing feel right to us. And that might look different for somebody else, but
Thank you.
Yeah, well said. Claire, do you have anything last?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's no wrong way to handle this. It's such an uncertain time. So however is best to get through it. And I really have been valuing these panels. So thank you, Ian and Adrian and Meredith, for putting these on. I think when my first big show got canceled in March, Meredith was my first call as far as like a freak out as in where is our head at, like where are our heads at with everything. And then like a couple weeks later, this was born, and I was like, this is such a good resource. It's just nice to hear where everybody's heads are at. It's just, I feel like I have a freak out every like 4 days or something like that, and the rest is okay. But it's good to know that we're all going through it together. Nobody's alone here. So
call me when you have your next freak out. We can have it together.
These are limiting the freak outs though, so it's good.
Do you have last closings?
Just know that you're not alone. But if you all want to, just knock on my door on Facebook, knock on my door on email or whatever. I'm pretty good at peeling you off the ceiling and popping you off the floor. I really am.
You are and continue to be so. Thank you, Jill. Thanks for joining.
How about you, Ian?
Yeah, I just thank you to everybody on the panel. I know it was a little bit of last minute, so thanks for jumping into it. Really do appreciate all your thoughts. Everybody that's out there watching too, if you have any suggestions on maybe some content you want to see going forward, please do, hit us up, let us know. And just to that aspect too, let's just keep staying in touch, keep talking. Everybody, and I agree with everybody here, be kind, be gentler, and keep trying to be as positive as you can through this, because you're right, there is a lot of silver lining in this, where we have the power to come out of this. At no point in our human history have we gone, at least our human history, have we gone through this. So we have the power to make some real positive change for all of us, and to be, have a creative collective in our ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
I have one final thought, and we appreciate you guys so much, and please find each other online. This is an old proverb by Alanis Morissette. It is, I am broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but I'm kind. I'm short, but I'm happy, baby.
Damn.
You guys so
That's all
much.
we really need to know.
Woo! And blowing in the wind.
Thanks guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.